Hello, D1. All right, for today's biome, we are going to be talking about the desert. And we are going to be looking at the desert in a couple different categories. We are going to discuss the location of deserts, where we'll primarily find them, as well as we'll discuss climate, animals that we'll find in the desert, plants and vegetation, as well as just discuss some interesting facts. And so before we begin talking about those other categories, we should first look at where will we find a desert. And so looking at our world map we have here, we will primarily find deserts in North America, South America, Africa, Asia, and Australia. It is important to note, however, that deserts are on all 7 continents. So we'll find it on all continents. It is also important to note, as you guys discovered in your reading yesterday, that deserts cover 1/5 of the land surface. So we're looking at the planet Earth, our land surface. It takes up about 1/5 or 20% of land. So that's really also really good information to know. So deserts are really taking up a great portion of the land that we have on planet Earth. And so keep that in mind. So again, we're primarily going to find deserts in North America, South America, Africa, Asia, and Australia. But it is important to note that we will find deserts on all continents, so Europe and Antarctica as well. And now let's go ahead, let's come over to climate. And when we are looking at climate, we are discussing the weather, right? And so when we look at the temperature of the desert, it's important to know that there are different average temperatures based on daytime, so when it's daytime, and nighttime, right? During the day, it will be different than it will be at night. And that's not too different from what we experience here on every day. It will usually be different in the day, usually warmer in the day than at night. But what happens is it's way more extreme in the desert. So during the day, it is about an average of 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, whoa, that is pretty hot. That is hotter than what we experience on most summer days. And then at nighttime, it is an average of only 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see that there is an extreme change in temperature from day to night. So we have a really, really hot day and a really, really cold night. You'll also know that it is really dry. So that means that there's not going to be much rain. We're going to have probably about 3 to 5 inches of total rain for a year. Total rain in a year. So 3 to 5 inches is not much, especially for an entire year. And so that is how we know it's really dry there, is because how little water they're going to have. And talking about our climate, we're going to see that we really only have 2 seasons. So remember, we experience 4 seasons. So we experience fall, winter, and spring and summer, but they really only experience summer. So I'm going to draw a little sun for summer and winter. And so I'm going to draw a little snowflake for winter. And so you can see that there are going to be differences with that as well. Now moving on to plants and vegetation. So plants and vegetation really refer to what kind of plants are we seeing there, what kind of life are we seeing there that is not animals or mammals or any of that. And so for plants and vegetation, we're going to notice that the soil is really thin and sandy. And so As we noted in some of the pictures from our readings, we know that that it's really sandy, a lot of the deserts, and so you're going to notice that it's really thin. If I pick it up, it kind of just falls through my fingers, and so that's what I mean when I'm talking about sandy. We also notice that the soil has rocks in it. There might be some rocks in it, especially when we look at semi-arid deserts like we're seeing here in this picture with this vegetation. And sometimes it's even gray in color. So while there is sand that's really like brown, when we look at deserts like the one we're looking at here, the sand, or the soil rather, is kind of gray. It's also very dry. The soil is very dry, and that is because it soaks, or for that reason it's very dry, and because of how thin the soil is, it soaks up water super fast. And so whenever it rains, the soil immediately takes that water and it soaks up it super duper fast because there's nothing really stopping it from reaching the bottom of the soil really fast. Along with that, we know that there is salt on that top layer. Because of evaporation. So because that the soil is drying up the water so quickly, it creates a salt layer on the top. Due to that evaporation. And then finally, some kind of plants that we'll notice are cactus, which you can see obviously from our picture. We'll also notice shrubs. We'll notice a prickly pear, which you can see right here. As well as a cardone plant. And this is not the only plants we will see, but here are just some examples of different plants and vegetation that we will see. Now let's go ahead, let's move on. I believe this is almost everybody's favorite part, animals. The animals that we see in the desert are rather cool. And as we discussed, we're not going to see very large mammals here just because of how hot it is and it's so hard for them to find shade. So we'll usually see medium-sized mammals, and then if we do have a larger mammal, there's usually adaptations, which we will discuss further, for these mammals that allow them to survive and live in the desert. So we will find foxes here. We'll see bugs like spiders. We'll also see snakes, camels, which will be a larger mammal that we know for sure has some adaptations that allow it to survive in the desert, coyotes, as well as antelope. And antelope are kind of like a type of deer that we'll look at more pictures, but you will notice that they are similar to a deer in that sense. And so yeah, those are going to be our animals. Again, this is not a full list of animals that we will see in the desert, but that is enough to give you kind of a good idea of what kind of creatures we will see. Now we move on to our interesting facts. And so here in California, we actually have a desert known as Death Valley. And what's really interesting about Death Valley is it's not just in California. Death Valley actually spans over 3 states. So that means you'll find Death Valley in 3 different states. 3 states. So as noted, we have Death Valley in California, and I'll put CA as an abbreviation. We also have Nevada, And as well, we will have Arizona. So you know that this desert must be massive if it's able to cover not only parts of California, Nevada, but then also Arizona. And then the Sahara, which is also a really famous desert. I'm sure maybe several of you have heard the word or the name Sahara before. It is in Africa and it spans 3.5 million square miles. So you know that that is huge, 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 huge. And so that is going to just be a quick little lesson on deserts. We will discuss this more. We will come back over this chart, but this is just to give you guys some quick information about deserts. And yeah, we will continue this conversation later in another Zoom. But if you guys have questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day.